Hi, my name is Amelia Martens, and I'm coming to you today from my living room for Kentucky Writers' Day. I'm the author of 4 chapbooks and 1 full-length collection, The Spoons in the Grass Are There to Dig a Moat, which came out from Sarah Van Books, an awesome Kentucky press, in 2016. So I'm going to read 4 poems from the collection today, and then I'm going to end with a new poem. The first poem is called A Field, and this was originally published in the Hampton-Sydney Poetry Review. A Field. Once upon a time there was a fly. Once upon a time there was an ache shaped like a sunflower, at least to the eye. Once upon a time a field lay down in a patch of gods and got shot through the gut with cotton and wheat. Once upon a time all grass was seagrass, and we swam serrated by the blades of all known light. Okay. The second poem I'm going to read is called Late Night Comedy. We listen to our daughter cry while frogs uncork their throats. An owl in our oak hits each note necessary to pull a white mouse to the sky. If she needs to ask, then I need to tell her why. Our daughter wants to know if monsters are alive. Like dinosaurs. Were they, but then they died? I have no proof, no photos or bones. Monsters are alive. Somewhere. But what are monsters? The unnamed unknown, a problematic point of view. She asks me to lift her so she can squish a carpenter ant as it crawls up the door jamb. We are monsters, Mama, and we don't even live under a bridge. You want to tell her something like you mean it. Go on. There's an opening coming up to your right, a turnstile, a spinning wheel. Touch it. There are people we don't know. There are so many people we don't know. All right. And then this third poem comes from giving our daughter a bath, and I find that I actually write a lot of poems about bath time. It's called Coming Forth to Carry Us. On the brown bathroom rug, our daughter. What am I doing? I'm dying. You close your eyes when you're dying. The family of plastic ducks float, little boats sculpted into their backs. Blue, yellow, green, all colors make all things. Close your eyes, Mama. Just close your eyes. You are dying. Goodbye, dry skin, dry tub, dry rug, the water level's rising. Come, dog, close your eyes. Be dying. All right. And the last poem I'm going to read takes its title from a movie title. They shoot horses, don't they? And I've changed just one word, so the title is They Shoot People, Don't They? Much of the world is current on their hunger strike. I can't tell our daughters everything will be all right. They are less afraid of the dark than of the light. Our keelboat has run aground. Yesterday, another man opened a door in someone's chest. You think we are coming around. You think we are blessed, homeward bound. What is there to confess? The parts per million, the hummingbird needles, the losses so fine, we shed them with our skin. All right, and I'm going to end with a brand new poem. My writing's done some weird things in this time of a pandemic, and I haven't been writing very much, but this poem came to me at the beginning of April, and it's still a prose poem. It's called Pandemic April. Our neighbor's son, home on emergency dorms closed, load your U-Haul and leave notice, is out back swinging a golf club and smoking one cigarette after another. And I have yelled at the children nearly every day, and the guest bed is covered in a changing geography of clean laundry, which no one else can see. Outside, the spring is fierce, all a blossom. Enough rain and gradual warming, as if the earth is fluffing her skirt, about to ride her bicycle through the universe, newly unencumbered by parasites, people flying and driving and being everywhere across her body, gnats bent on the task of making all situations worse. The news says waters in Venice are crystal, the Himalayas visible, and a friend posts a picture of downtown Los Angeles. The air so clear the city looks naked, no fur of pollution curled around long-necked buildings. I want a date by which everything will be okay. And that is impossible, as most things are impossible. We are growing cucumbers, peas, radishes, and today the old bean seeds, proofed over 2 years in a jar under the sideboard, popped their green arms out of the soil. And the sun is still the sun, though we each spin on now, feeling the 8-minute delay of light, as if we are negatives held up, paused, and made to look through ourselves toward the sky. All right. Thanks for listening. I hope you're all healthy at home, and we'll get out of this soon.
Hi, I'm J.D. Wilkes, and I'm happy, privileged, and honored to have been invited to participate in Kentucky Writers' Day, and I'm going to be reading from my unfinished follow-up sequel to my novel, The Vine That Ate the South, and I figured I'd just start at the top at Chapter 1, and here we go. Chapter 1, True Love. Chuck Bumpus, better known in the stump removal business as Chainsaw Charlie, took a pull from a limp brand beer can, one he'd been warming up over the fire pit, and went ahead and said what everybody else was thinking. Skeeter's done got it worse since the Martens up and flew the coop. Danged old punky house's models well done came it on down. You took the words right out of my mouth, Charlie, Brother Wibb upspoke. Here, hold my beer, said Charlie, taking the lead. So the pole holding up the martin gourds was rightly felled. They are little birdhouses, actually, albeit ones long ruined by snapped widowmaker limbs. It seems the branches had cracked during an ice storm a while back, and had fallen in such a way as to allow snakes to enter the bird holes, whereupon they'd eaten up all the eggs. True enough, because Charlie went to pulling out some snake skins from them and immediately commenced fashioning them into hat bands. Once rid of the dead snakes, the gourds got carved into jack-o'-lanterns. But the biggest one was set aside to become a banjo. A gift for Cleft Palate Leo. He was over on the porch where his old-timey string band faced out to a yard of moonlit revelers. It was All Hallows Eve. First, a note regarding Leo's band. Notice how rib bones and whisk brooms are accepted as legitimate musical instruments. They can be used to keep the rhythm, after all. However, they are only to be used by those least among us. Those who are the most musically hopeless. Or, well, let's be honest, the most tetched. The most inbred, that is. Bless their hearts. On this day, the ultimate consolation prize is a loosely rolled up copy of the Possum Trot Thrifty Nickel. This makeshift megaphone, as it were, was to be awarded to 80-year-old Eve Balfour, whose only talent is what they call eefing, a hillbilly form of mouth music akin to beatboxing, hence his name. "Can't pitch a whoop-de-doo without no eef," they all hollered. That's why he always gets the honor to start the tune. All heads turned toward the old slew-footed dwarf as they awaited the official setting of the tempo. Then up he started his impeccable eefing, that lost art form now heard only in hee-haw reruns and usually never not accompanied by armpit noises. "Good old Eve," they rejoiced. "Bless his heart the most." The tempo was set, and the rhythm of their one same song endlessly lilted along the garth. Bum-diddy, 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 bum-diddy. It was an ancient witch-burning tune called The Death of Goody Nurse, a doozy dating back to the trials of Salem. But it was a lively number, one that galloped like a runaway chuck wagon in a dog food commercial, though this one perhaps chased by a Halloween hellhound. Cleft Palate Leo and his stump jumpers, those slack-jawed makers of mirth, played on and on, providing the square dance soundtrack for an acre's worth of townsfolk. Most of them lived drab, hopeless lives, but on that hallowed eve they danced all night long, swigging moonshine, whooping it up, and making whoopee. Each beat ricocheted up and under their violent, clogging feet like the bullets of a bandit making a drunk man dance. Boot heels tapped with nailed-on bottle caps, and the bare feet of ladies kicked up under their crinolines. All this while crumb-snatching kids gobbled mud clumps a flying loose from all that dancing. Their wide eyes bulged from the holes cut into devil masks. Smiles even wider hid beneath their masks as well. Smiles just as manic as the maws drawn on. Yet pumpkins, gourds, and turnips sneered back at them with flickering inset candles. Segmented cardboard skeletons with hinged joints that swung around grommets. Orange tissue ribbon and bunting, effigies of banshees, rubber vampire bats, and now snakeskins dangled on high from the arms of the trees. Here, those trees are subconsciously understood to be holy. In their divine design, they do, after all, express the eldest proclivities of the universe, what with their competitive fractals vying for sunlight. Although no one here tonight could ever articulate such a concept, I must say, meaning no offense, but their Irish blood memory sure could. It would say something like, "Draw we now nigh into raking shadow, like lambs what seek the shepherd's hook. See the trees with rickety wands, like crooked lightning steeples cast to the stars. Now go, up from the slumber of Sith, go ye roots and rhizomes, to ring a ring for fairies. O writhe and weave thy Irish knots in pagan genuflection. Veins like vines, blood like sap, are we not akin? Course they not both through wise and winding channels? Let us now enwreathe the woodlands, hand in hand, to rejoice this all Halloween. Indeed, this place seems a grove groomed long ago by the magic of grannies. The burled skin of sycamores curl like the twisty stripes of a wicked witch's knee socks. Look, see how the oldest tree hangs the lowest. It is heavy bent with both age and those dangling holiday decorations, looking something like the devil's chandelier, or a lumber bumbershoot blown inside out by the gusts of hell's inglory. Yep, it was a good old hillbilly masquerade like you've never seen before. But if you are ever tempted to attend, take heed. Tradition is ruthlessly enforced. It wasn't long before my head was sent plunging into a No. 2 wash tub of floating apples. Plunged not, however, of my own volition, but by the heavy hand of a stranger. Was it a dream? Was it a dream when those bobbing red pippins transfigured into floating heads? Was it a dream when I felt the clumsy clonk of their weight in buoyant collision with my own skull? When the crisp water of autumn became the winter sea, and I struggled against its cold gray swells, as surges of stinging brine broke like waves of old regrets, each recollection forcing agape my mouth to curse, shout, and gulp? Regret syndrome. Terrible times from a life long lost. A time in my life when she, sweet Delilah, was mine. With head held under by phantom force, a death grip that coursed with a fury that doubled with each of my protests, while waves crashed and salt flooded the senses, each crystal a hot poison blasting my lungs, as a picture tube of static slowly dimmed my mind's eye, and my wits escaped like cowards. Right at that very moment, in hellish torture ere we all give ourselves over to the great cosmic deep, behold, the grip loosened, and up I exploded into glory. For such horrors labor not to last, as even the ghastliest nights what hold us hostage with nightmares must make way for a new day. I am reminded how Mother Earth herself emerges each dawn from her darkest depths. Every day she is reborn, dew-begotten and fresh, turning her luscious face away from her wash-tub of woe. Instead, she turns to the light of our life-giving sun. Though traumatized by the memories of night and of the relentless Sisyphus cycle of it all, she is alive again, every day, reinvigorated, exhilarated. Gasping and grateful for a second chance, I rejoin the festivities. There never was a furious hand, no devils but those of the children's masks. There was only the merriment of song, the happy haints of Sam Hain, and that same damn tune that now sounded wonderful. Bum-diddy, 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 bum.
Hi, I'm Britton Shurley, and welcome to my living room for Kentucky Writers Day. I'm a poet living in Paducah, Kentucky, and I've got about 4 poems for you today. Since it's Kentucky Writers Day, I tried to pick all 4 poems that had something loosely to do with Kentucky, so I think you'll see the thread. This first one is called Spinning the Vast Fantastic, and that's actually the title of my forthcoming chapbook from Bull City Press. I'm really excited about that. And the only thing I think you need to know is that this is about the Kentucky meat shower, which actually happened in March of 1876. I think you'll be able to figure it out what it is from the poem. Spinning the Vast Fantastic. Where at 2 p.m. on a Friday, a girl can make soap in her yard, look up toward a cornflower sky and be showered with chunks of meat. For 10 long minutes it rains. Enough to fill a horse wagon, old Uncle Boot might say. All while she stirs in salt and lard, or leaches white lye from ash, and listens when men wander past, leading a light brown mule and weighing this mystery's merits. One claims it's bushels of mutton. The other says bales of venison cut from a herd of deer that grazed on morels and roses. Still, Benjamin Franklin Ellington swears it's the muscle of bear. Others think stables of horse meat, the lungs of slaughtered infants, or pecks of flesh from a knife fight picked up and spit from a whirlwind 2 counties over. Most blame the rain on vultures, how they vomit if scared by a sound or when needing to lighten their load. But this girl knows the bellies of vultures, their circles spun black through a sky. She knows this Friday was blue, clearing clean as the O in wonder. All right, the idea for this next poem actually happened about 2 or 3 years ago when I came out one Sunday morning to go get some donuts for my girls, and my car was missing. So this is an epistle poem. It's a letter. To Francisco Starks, who stole my car from my driveway late one Saturday night. I like to think you desperately needed it, that its missing rearview mirror must have spoke to a past that haunts you. Some ghost on your heels like a hound you love to forget exists. I hope the smell of hay and compost worked through seats and floor mats from loads I hauled all day for the garden my family was planting, somehow called through the night like a song. Like the song of a rare, wise owl neither you nor I could name. And I hope the shovel you stole, resting inside my trunk, has found itself a home, doing deep and dirty work such things are made to do. I pray you're also blessed with children, since you stole the car seat we bought, and that your son or daughter has helped you, not to steal such things as cars, but to put that shovel to use, doing things like planting fruit, a bramble or prickly thicket of gooseberries, blackberries, raspberries, which have taken a quick, bright liking to every scrap of sunlight and air their leaves have been free to breathe. Your yard overtaken and wild, devoured by sugar and thorns. All right, this next poem's title is called Parthenogenesis, and it's basically the fancy word for when an animal becomes pregnant without doing the necessary things to become pregnant, which happens all the time. It's basically the scientific word for virgin birth, and this totally came from an NPR story and the Louisville Zoo. Parthenogenesis. If the ankle of a horse is holy, then so is the cow's cracked hoof, the sheep's bleeding tongue, the wiry gray taint of a sow. And if each of these things is divine, who's to say God's skin can't shed? That he can't slink back with a snake's forked tongue, belly scratched and hallowed by gravel, to hiss or kiss like the rest of us, just dragging these bodies through Eden. Last night, in a Louisville zoo, where north is stitched to south, and where slaves, when the sky was clear, tried to swim the moonbright Ohio, this virgin python named Thelma gave birth to a clutch of eggs. There weren't shepherds or wise men or camels, no decrees for butchering babies. There was just a guard on his round in the city so few would call holy. His light like a star's far shine as it lit on Thelma's coiled scales, warming what no one expected. These things that were not, then were. I should also add the first phrase of this poem, if the ankle of a horse is holy, is totally stolen / borrowed from the poet Larry Levis. And this next poem actually takes a few phrases from another great poet to look up, whose name is Czesław Miłosz. He's a Polish poet that I totally recommend. And this poem came from hanging out with a friend I met through the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange Program, which I think everyone, if you're watching this, you should look up and think about signing up for in the future. It's a great experience. So this one's called Against the Pawning of Steel Guitars. Even if your wife is pregnant and the home you hope to buy costs more than you squirreled away, even if the thing sat silent, sleeping like the dead might do in back of a darkened closet in the room of a rented house you know you'll soon outgrow. Because some things rise from the dead, because your body is full of blood. Now I know this talk of death, of blood and sleep seems odd on the eve of having a child. But Joe, don't think I'm drinking. Not this early on a Friday morning, or I missed what you said that night when you talked of a girl you know. A stone-cold poet, you called her. This bird in a scarlet hijab, this quiet refugee just bursting with heartbreaking song as she walked the racket and clatter of a high school hall in Kentucky. I've never met this girl, but I think of her now as an old Polish bird, one that sang perhaps to Milosz as he wrote that letter to Ginsberg sitting cold outside in his garden. This poem he grew to hate, you showed me one night in a bar with this line that floored us both. His life's a discarded tire, lying by the road. So if two men can stand in a bar after drinking well past midnight, and one can count without slurring on the tips of two tipsy fingers the times in his life he's made music, a music that makes him weightless, his fingers less clumsy, his boots less heavy, then that man should keep that guitar. We live in the midst of a murderous century. Hold tight the things you need, those filled with love and song. All right, that's all I got for y'all. Thank you very much. Please stay well, stay safe.
Hello, my name is Matt Jaeger. I'm a youth services assistant from the McCracken County Public Library. I'm the author of 3 collections of short stories for adult readers, but I'm going to read a couple chapters to you today from a novel in progress for young readers, a juvenile fiction chapter book called The Creation of Lilith Pomegranate. I'm going to start with chapter 6. So to catch you up with what has happened in the book so far, it's the story of a 12-year-old girl who has lost her mother and recently moved with her father over Christmas break to a new house in the country. She's nervous about starting at a new school, certain that everyone is going to make fun of her. She's an artistic soul who likes to make figurines out of clay, mostly animals, but her newest sculpture has not turned out so well. It's ugly and misshapen, doesn't look like any animal she's ever seen before. So this is where we're going to pick up the story with chapter 6 of the creation of Lilith Pomegranate. This chapter is called The Voice of the Universe. A draft through the window sent a shiver through her skin. Lilith pulled her blinds and changed into warm flannel pajamas. She grabbed a white knitted blanket from the back of a chair and wrapped it around her shoulders so it bunched around her neck. I bet I look like an old woman right now, she thought. Lilith sat on the edge of her bed and looked around her room. All of her creatures looked back at her from their shelves. Their eyes appeared wider and glassier than earlier, and if Lilith wasn't mistaken, their faces showed concern. What are you worried about? She said. Could they worry about the same things she did? The new house, the first day of school, or maybe the strange creature that sat on her desk? Don't be like that, she said aloud. Everything is going to work out. Her creations looked unconvinced, though she couldn't know for sure because they never talked back. She knew it was silly to talk to them. Their faces were only paint, their bodies hardened clay. They couldn't smile or frown or growl, much less talk. But it was times like this that she wished they could. Everything at the new house was so quiet, it made Lilith feel as if she was the only person left on the face of the earth. Life in the city had gotten Lilith used to certain noises. She had never felt alone because of the sounds. Traffic, sirens, jackhammers, and beeping garbage trucks, and cars roaring and backfiring. The bustle of people coming and going with their music and laughter and shouting and shouting. The hum and buzz of the city never stopped. It was always there, even in the dead of night. And if you listened in the right way, each sound became indistinguishable from another. Each jackhammer and shouting neighbor and backfiring car, all the bad sounds and good sounds blended into one humming voice. Perhaps, Lilith had thought, It was the voice of the universe. You especially heard that voice when you were as quiet as you could possibly be, alone in an empty room, hidden under a blanket with your mouth clamped shut so you wouldn't cry anymore. Only then you heard it not with your ears, but as a low rumble below the sound of your own heartbeat. And then you weren't alone. You had the voice. It made things that weren't living seem alive. So you always had a friend to talk to, or many friends, or a mother. And then you could join in softly at first with your own hum or small cry, adding your voice to the big voice. But not here. Everything was too quiet in the country at the new house. There was no hum, no voice. Lilith stood up and walked across the room to the new creature on the desk. She bent over until she was eye level with it. "It's hard being the only one, isn't it?" she said. Then she introduced herself because it was the least she could do. The very least. After all, she was the one who had made it. "My name is Lilith Pomegranate," she said. And the creature didn't laugh or giggle or look at her as if she was the most unfortunate soul on the planet. It wore no expression whatsoever. And before she knew it, Lilith had told her creature about how they just moved from the city, and how strangely her father acted, and how she hated the way she looked, and how she was starting school in the morning and feared that it wouldn't go well. With her thumb and forefinger, Lilith reached out and straightened out a bend in the creature's wing. "You're not worried about any of this anyway, are you?" she said. And she knew it was true because the creature didn't have enough of a face yet to look worried. Its eyes were only pinpricks. Its mouth was a thin, straight line, as if made with a razor blade. "If anything deserves a little pity around here," she said, "it's you. You're my fault. All my fault." Looking at the thing on the desk in front of her, she suddenly felt guilty that she'd been afraid to touch it, and that she'd created it so badly, and she couldn't even give it a name. Mostly she felt guilty because she knew she couldn't fix it. It almost seemed cruel to let it stay the way it was. It wouldn't fit in with the rest of her creations on their shelves. Where would she put it? Near the insects? By the amphibians? Catty corner to the kangaroo? There was no place for it. So how easy would it be to mush it up? Pound it into a pancake, or squeeze it into a ball and seal it back into its tin? She could try again tomorrow, or next week, or not at all. Maybe I should just get rid of it, she thought. Chapter 7. Blink. Lilith picked up the unwanted creature by the head, holding it between her thumb and forefinger, then looked at all of her other creations on their shelves. Their eyes were still wide, but they no longer wore faces of concern. It appeared as if they had thrust out their chins ever so slightly in a look of anticipation. "Should I do it?" she asked them, and she couldn't help but think they would nod if they could. Lilith shrugged off her blanket and carried the creature across the room, where she pulled up the blinds and opened the window. She looked for her father in his chair and saw that he'd gone back inside. With the creature cradled in her hands, she propped her elbows on the sill and leaned out. The cold air immediately pinked her nose. Everything was silent, not even the whine of the wind through the trees. All was still, as if everything around her held their breath at the same time. "I'm alone, maybe forever." As small as her voice was sometimes, she was sure that if she spoke now, even if she just cleared her throat, she could fill up the silence, her whole room and the world outside. Just the smallest of words. What could she say? Lilith listened to herself breathe. She closed one eye, then the other. "I'm sorry," she said, mostly unconsciously. The two words leaked out of her as a whisper, and as she suspected, though they came out softly, the sounds filled her room and whooshed out the window into the yard and into the trees beyond. Lilith let the sound of her voice, the only sound, fade away, and she leaned even farther out the window. "I'm sorry," she said again, a little louder. Then she began tightening her fingers around her creature's already wobbly neck. She gradually increased the pressure, holding her own breath while she did. She pinched, and the cold clay slowly mashed between her fingers. She pinched a little harder, and then a little harder. "I'm just a silly little girl," she thought, closing her eyes. Her feet didn't reach the floor when she sat in a chair. Her ears stuck out from the side of her head like satellite dishes. She had a weird name. The creature's lolling head felt like a smoothed river stone in her hand. All Lilith had wanted was to make something beautiful, just one thing, one good thing, but it looked like that wasn't meant to be. Nothing she touched ever turned out right. "I'm sorry," she said, for a third time, her voice no longer filling the room and whooshing out the window, but sticking as close to her as her name. "For everything," she breathed. With those words and her eyes closed, Lilith swore the clay in her hands grew warmer and warmer. Not just the head, but the whole body. She couldn't be sure, but it felt as if one of her creature's tiny hoof-like legs twitched in her palm. Lilith opened her eyes and looked at her ugly new creature, and it looked back, blinking its pinprick eyes, just once, very slowly.